Welcome to In Such a Time, conversations on Jewish life, leadership, and meaning. Each week, Rabbis Jonathan Jaffe and Leora Londy explore the moments, questions, and ideas that shape who we are and who we aspire to be. And now for this week's conversation.
Welcome back to In Such a Time podcast, conversations on Jewish life, leadership, and meaning. I'm your co-host, Rabbi Londy, alongside with Rabbi Jaffe today. And we're going to be speaking about something that I've really been wanting to speak about for a long time, and that's women's mental health. And we're going to be speaking about it in relationship to the story of Lindsay Clancy, who is on trial at the moment for having horrifically killed her children. The reason that I wanted to speak about this today, and I'm really happy that you were willing to speak to me about this, is I think that women's mental health is something that, it's something that's different than the general mental health conversation, especially in the postpartum reality after a woman's had a child under immense pressure for motherhood. And it's also something that's very personal to me. I have 3 children. I dealt with postpartum depression and anxiety after I think all of my children. And it's something that I felt so privileged to have support for, because when I lived in Israel, there was a lot of support around those issues. And I think sometimes in America, and specifically in areas such as ours, we all want to present in a really beautiful and functional way, but sometimes there's struggles underneath. And so I wanted to bring light to that today.
I think that's lovely. I think that's beyond just that we present ourselves in a beautiful way. We present ourselves in an invincible way at times, and that I think that we as clergy often have a vantage point in the people's lives in which we are invited in to see behind that facade. And we realize in being clergy that everyone walks around the world acting as though they have it together and everything's great, but everyone has service that they're going through, and certainly the issues that you speak of here deserve attention. So thank you for bringing it. I had not even read about or heard about this case until you had presented it, and I've done some reading since then, and what's just an absolutely horrific story.
So let me just catch everybody up on what the story is and why it's of significance for us in the Jewish perspective, I think. It's a story about a woman, about a family, Lindsay Clancy. She had 3 children. She was considered by basically everyone who knew her to be an outstanding mother, a loving mother, caring, just really taking care of her children in all the ways that a mother can. And she knew that she was suffering after her 3rd child. And her 3rd child was 8 months old when she had this psychotic break, and she asked for help. She sought help. She sought help from therapists, from other mental health professionals, including psychiatrists. She tried to have herself committed to a facility because she knew that she was a threat to her children. She tried 52 times to get help, and she didn't get the help that she needed. And she got to the point where now she's on trial because she's allegedly, I say that because we don't know all the facts of the case, killed her children and then tried to kill herself, which is an extreme, horrific, horrible thing. There's a lot on this. There's a lot about what her husband knew, how he supported her, how could he have let this happen? It's just a tragic, tragic story all around. And I think that it's of significance for us to talk about today. Number one, because we're humans, and this is a complex story of someone who committed a horrific crime, but also, are they culpable for the horror of what they did when they sought help? And also, how do we help people in our own community who are suffering in this way? What is a community's role in supporting those who are suffering? What's a community's role in bringing awareness to issues and to stigmatizing issues of suffering and not always functioning and not always being the outstanding parent that you want to be or hope to aspire to enact. And so maybe the question that I want to start with this morning is, what does Judaism mean by responsibility when a person's mind may not reliably be their own? Like when there's instances in the Jewish tradition of a shoteh. Do you want to give us a little explanation as to what a shoteh is and why this made it into rabbinic literature?
Right. I think this is really a discussion here that we're having. I think there's multiple subjects. One subject we had is about temporary insanity, and if that has a foundation within Jewish text. The other one I think really again has to do with this notion of invincibility and always projecting ourselves. And does the Jewish community as a whole, do we have something to look at ourselves in the mirror about? Do we allow for imperfection, and are we creating the same facade in which people feel as though they cannot get the help that they need? On the first one, when it comes to the idea of temporary insanity, it's funny. I was looking back at the text, and the first thing I saw was a mirror of what we saw. We talked last week about the hubris of King Saul and of King David, and within Saul, especially, you see as well declining intellectual and emotional abilities to the point that some commentators will look back at the Tanakh and see Saul as a case of bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
And that it calls David in order to play music to sort of soothe his brain, soothe his mind, and whether or not we should Saul be exonerated from any of his actions, his violent actions at the end of his life, due to the fact that he was no longer cognitively present? And was he suffering truly that led him to lash out? And then the Talmud picks this up with this idea of the shoteh, the same idea of, is there a legal class of an individual who it temporarily has their judgment impaired, to the fact that we should be more lenient in our judgment of that person, understanding the circumstances?
Yeah, a shoteh also, it's interesting. It's a category of someone who kind of has like greater spiritual abilities, someone who has like more tapped into the bigger feelings of the world, who has a
like overwhelmed by it.
They're overwhelmed by
Right.
it, and it drives them insane.
Right. There's too much.
There's too much.
I wonder if that is like Acher from the story of the four who enter into the garden from the Talmud. I don't know if you keep this in mind, and that it says that Acher, that he cut down the shoots, and that he becomes violent in this because he is overtaken by this vision of the world to come and of the receiving God's essence in such a pure form that he's driven insane by this, and that Acher becomes this this idea of someone who becomes unstable because of the purity of their revelation of God.
So I think that's an interesting place to pick up on, because I think anyone who's dealt with mental illness, or anyone who's dealt with moments of psychosis, or just not being fully in control of what's happening in your mind and in your body and your spirit, know that sometimes that you're not okay, and you can't. Sometimes we're in denial about that. Sometimes you can articulate it. Sometimes you ask for help. Sometimes people don't know how to help you. And I think that is one of the issues of this story. That's one of the issues in general, is when someone comes to you and says, I'm not doing great. I'm having all these thoughts. I'm scared. I'm not feeling in control. What do we do with that? What's our responsibility as people who care about other people, in helping people who reach out? It's interesting. Sometimes we don't want to get involved in people's lives. We're like, well, that's their private thing to deal with and to take care of, and I'm sure they'll figure it out. And they're just telling me and I should listen, and that's the extent of what I should do. But sometimes people come to you. I mean, this has happened to me. I know this has happened to you, in the capacity as rabbi, in the capacity as just me, and saying, I need help. I need a plan. I need you to walk me through something. I need you not to be apathetic to my situation. Please help me.
I think sometimes people with good intentions will say things that are unhelpful, that someone would say, Rabbi, I'm not doing well. I'm really not feeling that great. And the reaction can be, oh, you're great. What are you talking about? You look fantastic. You're doing great. And to sort of bolster, and in trying to lift that person up, you're actually sort of steamrolling right over their actual issues, and you're not hearing them in the moment. And so I think what you're bringing up here is a moment in which this woman was not heard and also was not attended to, that there were concrete steps that could have been taken that were missed, all of these warning signs. So I would ask you, that as someone who's gone through some of these issues around pregnancy and childbearing, such, like, what was helpful to you? What do you wish that someone would have said to you in the moment?
So, in Israel, which is like one of the core values of the society is having babies, be fruitful and multiply, literally the first commandment of the Torah. There is a lot of support in the social welfare state to support mothers because there's pregnancies and births all the time. So there's a lot of mechanisms that are part of your prenatal checkups that monitor you as you approach birth to make sure that you're not falling between the cracks. That's like that is something that the government does, like multiple, not the government, that's something that the health system does multiple times to make sure that they're helping and supporting. Sometimes that's a little bit cold. I don't know what it is here. I hope that there's a similar system in America or in the many Americas that exist. But the other thing that was very helpful is that other women, when they saw that, when they asked like friends, and it was usually people who were like maybe 10 years older than me who were out of the infancy stage, they saw like I was a little overwhelmed. They saw it was hard for me, that I was seemingly a little bit depressed, and they pulled me aside. They said, I've been through this too, and like, here's how I'm going to support you. I'm going to hold your baby while you go shower. I'm going to make you meals. I'm going to show up. You might not want me to show up, but I'm going to keep showing up for you. And I'm going to kind of be in your face a little bit and not let you be alone because I don't want you to be alone. And that was very inconvenient and not what I wanted.
But in hindsight, you're saying that you appreciated that?
Because as an American, as someone who grew up in this society, like that, I want to have my own struggles privately. That was like very shocking to me. And then I realized, no, that was such a blessing. That was such a gift. Having someone, first of all, bear witness to your struggle, telling you that what you're experiencing is real and that you're not alone. That's very powerful. The logistics of someone helping you and telling you, yeah, it's going to be okay. And this is how I'm going to help you be okay. And these are normal. And this is your brain chemistry and this is a normal reaction to having a child. That was very helpful too. And also the community of people coming around you and holding you, like physically, metaphorically, spiritually, emotionally. That was amazing. And those people became, first of all, friends, and then I felt like they were family. And it also let me do that for other people after I was out of those phases. I felt like this is something I have to pass forward. I have to do that. And I remember when I moved to this community and someone gave birth, I offered them. I said, "Can I come over and hold your baby like while you go shower?" Like, no.
We're good.
We're good. And I realize that there's different social norms, but I think that it's important that we don't allow ourselves to make life sterile because life is never sterile. And the hardships are part of what give it flavor and color. It's not always easy to go through those things, but we shouldn't be embarrassed or scared to be human in front of one another.
I think what you're talking about is just this natural tendency towards stoicism and acting as though, again, that we're invincible. And I think the Jewish community is certainly guilty of this. I'll give you one example. It doesn't have to do with the issue brought up to bear here, but that Jews tend to experience alcoholism in about the same rates as the countries that they live in.
Okay.
And we don't talk about alcoholism because we're sort of, the stereotype is that, oh, Jews aren't alcoholics. Jews are, hardworking and dependable, and then we're stoic, all of those things.
Yeah.
And that there's often a lack of resources around alcoholism for Jews because it's something that we are sort of embarrassed to talk about. It reminds me, and this is much more to your point, when I was living in San Francisco, there were two young Jewish women leaders in the community, really wonderful individuals, both of which had gone through failed pregnancies. And they decided to at the cemetery, which our synagogue owned, they created a space for mothers who had experienced miscarriage and other traumatic events of pregnancy, and a memorial to their unborn babies. And it was for them not only creating a physical space, but by these are two very public figures, by coming out and saying this is something that happened to me and that I continue to be affected by. It reverberates in my life emotionally. It gave permission for others to do the same. And when you look, we've been part of discussions with congregants as well, that the numbers are not insignificant, that just by the stats, there are significant numbers of our congregation who have gone through traumatic pregnancy, have given, have had, heard traumatic childbirth, um, and really don't talk about this as much. And I think that when you brought this topic up today, I think this is something you want to talk about as well. It's not just about, do we judge this individual for what she did, but more, how do we open up a conversation, a very vulnerable conversation around issues that are often swept under the carpet?
I'm happy that you brought up those elements as well, and I think it's poignant because this is going to come out next week, and we're going to be in Elul, in the month of Elul, which is the month preceding Rosh Hashanah. And Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the new year, is about the birth of the world, and most of the liturgy, most of the Torah readings and the Haftorah, they're about fertility.
Mm-hmm.
They're about how creating life and supporting life is not always promised, and it's not always a successful endeavor. And there's often pain and insanity that goes into it.
Rebecca calls out, Lama Anochi, like, why do I even exist if these two children in my womb, and if they're not going to be born?
Absolutely. And Hannah and not being able to have children, and Sarah not being able to have children, and Hagar being able to have children but not being able to support that. There's so much that goes into it, and I think that this period of the year kind of calls out to us to hear that pain, because we're celebrating life and we're celebrating the creation of the world. We're celebrating opportunity anew, but often before opportunity is lost. And I really, when I think the reason that this story resonated so deeply with me is that it's so easy to go off, to swerve off the road when you're dealing with so much as a mother who wants to succeed, who wants to be good to their children, who's holding everything. I think a lot of mothers, parents, I'm not going to just say mothers, but I think that there's a hormonal element to it. Not I think there is. And the story is just the culmination of all the biggest fears that we have around these issues coming to fruition. A woman that wants to do right by her children, a woman that thinks that by taking herself out and taking her children out of the world, she's doing something better. Like, she believed that. There's no doubt that what happened and what she did was horrific, but what led up to that, I think that's what we have to question. How do we support those who are in need? How do we,
before something like this
happens, how do we support those in need? How do we support pain? How do we make being human, being a woman, having those experiences, having pregnancy loss, and that's nothing to be embarrassed by. That's just a fact. It exists. I've gone through it. Many women have gone through it. The depression, the losses, the pregnancies. It's so important, I think, to just put it on the table and say, we're human. Let's allow ourselves to be vulnerable with one another. Let's allow ourselves to support one another. That's the entire point of community. That's the entire point of the Jewish endeavor, is to be in this together.
So you mentioned we're about to enter into Elul in the high holiday season, and our goal during high holidays is meant to, through our prayers and through our supplication, move God from din to rachamim, from judgment to mercy. And there's always a balance between the two. So when it comes to a case like this, where someone, if it's proven true, you know, they perpetrated the absolute most unforgivable act of infanticide, along with, multiple times. How do you want hold in two hands both a compassion for people going through plight like this, at the same time the judgment for someone? I mean, obviously that she is, if this is proven, she has committed a horrific act.
Yeah.
How do you hold those two at the same time?
I think that you kind of just said it. You have to say this is a horrific, horrible, tragic thing that this woman did in a moment of, in her most desolate, insane moment. Um, it's unforgivable. It's horrific, and it's a warning. I think to society, it's a warning to those who are seeing people in those situations. Like, what do you do to support those women, those families? There's also in, mom social media, because I know we're all targeted for different things. In the mom social media that I'm targeted for, there's also a question of why did her support system fail her? Where were all those people who said that they were there for her and didn't show up?
Right.
This story also happened in Israel in a very, very similar situation. The mother, I think, committed suicide, and it was another one of these warnings. She asked for help. She said she loved her kids. She said, I need someone to help me. I'm failing. I'm falling. I'm going to do this. I don't want to do this. And it was another like calling into question, where was the community? What does the community need to do? How could we prevent this? So I think that, yeah, you say this is horrific. She did this, if that's the case. Um, and what is our lesson to be learned from it as a collective who is accountable for one another?
Right. I think there's a very pertinent Jewish legal question to this, which is, to what degree is the bystander,
Yeah.
How much are they complicit if they do not, if they just stand idly by? So this goes to a case of if someone is watching someone being beaten, someone being stolen from, someone calling out for help as they are being sexually harassed, and if the bystander does not do anything to help them, then are they complicit in this? And in this case, this was someone calling out for help, for mental health in this case, and those around did not succeed in providing her the resources she needed. We have from Jewish law this idea of, do not put a stumbling block before the blind, and that's often seen as, don't create a circumstance where someone is going to potentially hurt themselves or others. For example, if you know that your friend is alcoholic, I keep coming back to alcoholism. I don't know why today.
No, I actually think it's an important one.
That you don't line up shots of alcohol when they come into your house. They don't, take them to a place where alcohol is served, because you are tempting them towards it. Now, in this case, no one was tempting her to harm her children. I don't know.
Except
But
for her own mental, yeah.
if there were understandable cries for help, and if the bystanders around her were not reactive and responsible, to those calls, then are they implicated somewhat in this horrific event?
I think that that's one of the questions that is being raised in the trial. And again, I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of it. I'm not I'm not an expert on this case, but I think that like we're gonna maybe pose more questions and have answers for it today. And I think that the reason that we're even engaging in this conversation is because I have the privilege of coming into the building every day and seeing so many young families who are, happy, and their kids are beautiful. And I only get a certain glimpse. And I think that this is a conversation saying, we want to be a support network, and the Jewish community and the synagogue should be a support network. And there is nothing wrong with saying things are really tough right now.
Like, I need help.
I need help. There's nothing wrong with that. Like the opposite of wrong. That is so strong. That is so brave. There's so many resources for getting help, whether it is coming to speak to us, whether it's having coffee, whether it's like sending an email to a friend or to somebody who who you trust, and saying, like, come over for 10 minutes, just be with me, or just be with my kids for 5 minutes so I can like take a deep breath, drink a cup of coffee. like scream into a pillow, whatever it is, because I need that. And I think that we should normalize relying on each other, really looking at this as a village, and not feeling like we have to go through things alone, which are impossible to overcome when you keep it to yourself.
Yeah, again, I think you and I have this very unique vantage point into people's lives in which people allow themselves to be vulnerable with us. And I think that for many of our congregants, I say this to my kids as well, who live a lot of their lives online and are watching everyone's most curated form of their selves being presented and mistaking that for actual life. And you and I get to see actual life. Like, every single family life cycle event that we have, whether they are happy ones like a birth or a b'nai mitzvah, whether they are sad ones like a funeral or a shiva, the family is laid open to bear, and the wiring, the guts that's usually kept under wraps, those frayed ends are exposed in those moments. And that's life. That's how everyone is. And I'm so thankful to have that vantage point to understand and to see the frayed ends around me, because they help me to accept the frayed ends of my own life more. I wish that more people had a chance to know that. And maybe if we understood that we're not so unique in our imperfections, then we'd be more willing to ask for help. And I think that for me, this brings us full circle to the high holidays.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is really all about imperfections and the idea that we have already scheduled Kol Nidre a year from now means that we know that we're going to make all of these vows, and we're gonna say this high holidays that we're gonna do it better this time. But already a year from now, we know that we're gonna mess some of that up, because we know that we are so imperfect, and we're gonna have to come together as a community and process that once again, because this is life and this is who we are.
Yeah, our tradition, I mean, the reason that I'm so compelled by the Torah and coming back to it literally year after year is because it doesn't make life look easy. It makes it look human and imperfect and flawed and kind of wonky. Um, and that's exactly what it is.
And I love the fact that you brought up the Hannah story, because what happens with Hannah? Hannah is overcome with emotion. She is, pleading for a child. And by the way, Hannah will hear this. This is Haftarah, Rosh Hashanah, and how is she treated by the priest in the temple? He thinks that she's drunk.
Yeah.
He can't see her pain. He writes off her, attempts to deal with it. He kind of makes a mockery of her. And she proves him wrong, and she begins to pray with her own words. And Hannah's prayer is where we get in our own practice the silent prayer, where we don't just read the words on the page, but we also dig deep into our heart and we try to access that which needs to be said. Um, I think that Hannah's case is incredibly informative to our moment, and that we need to be very clear not to be like Elkanah the priest, who mocks or labels her as a drunk, but see the people who are flailing around us and be there for them in their time of need.
Yeah, and maybe as a PSA, but failing or flailing or being in pain doesn't always look loud. It doesn't always look obvious. It's often very minute and nuanced.
I'm gonna say that's a very male thing too, is to internalize these things and to not talk about this. I don't know if you find that the same within the women's world, and not to genderize this too much, but
this is gendered, yeah.
But men are often, we don't talk our feelings very much. We don't have large circles of friends where we do so. We more often process internally, and all the more so are meant to be stoic and meant to be strong. And that I think men need this as much as women.
I agree. I don't think that this is not just a lesson for women. My perspective is that of a woman who's a mother who's dealt with this. But I also think, families are systems that rise and fall together. And let's just look out for one another.
Thank you for bringing up this subject. Is there anything else you wanted to say to our congregants about this, or
yeah,
I want to leave you the last word?
Yeah, this is an invitation. Reach out to me, reach out to Rabbi Jaffe if you want resources on getting help, not just getting help. If you just want to talk, you just want to kind of moan and complain and have someone to listen to you, we are so happy to listen. I'm so thankful that there were people who were willing to listen to me during all those periods of time. support groups. We have endless resources for helping you just get through the little and the huge things in life. And so really an invitation for coffee, lunch, ice cream, a walk, anything else you can think of. We're happy to be there with you. So during this high holiday season, where I think it brings up a lot of feelings of worthiness and where am I compared to last year, may this be a time of reflection and honesty, accountability, not just towards ourselves, but also towards one another.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us on In Such a Time. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. To learn more about Rabbis Jonathan Jaffe and Leora Londy, or to connect with Temple Bethel of Northern Westchester, visit bethelnw.org, or follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Temple Bethel NW. Thanks for listening.